Hey, everybody. It's Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock Central, and I'm Dr. John Sherk, and that means this is Brown Bag Lunch, where I bring you whatever I can to help you in the reality of managing a technician workforce or for technicians to just lead better lives. What I want to talk about today is this new dynamic that's in the workforce. And usually, when I do these things, what I do is I bring something that was part of the actual conversation, part of an actual conversation I've had with a client or a technician just in the last week. And so this conversation was about what it means now when a technician, quote unquote, is looking. In other words, they're working at a place. What it used to mean 10 years ago, if a technician was looking, it meant they were intending to leave and were looking for the next place they were going to work, right? However, and in this case, they were using that word like, is so and so looking? And then the answer they got was yes. And they thought, oh, that means he wants to quit. But it doesn't mean that anymore. Not most of the time. So the best data out there right now, and I can tell you that the workforce issues in industries with labor shortages are now and will continue to redefine all kinds of things. So just because something worked away 10 years ago doesn't mean it still works that way. And obviously we're in one of those labor shortage industries. So across the board in all US workers, roughly 80 to 82% say they are satisfied or very satisfied in their current job. And roughly 80 to 82% say they're open or very open to something else. So what does that mean? What happens? Well, it creates a zone where people start looking at the job market like it's kind of a uncultivated garden, and they're just watching to see if an apple pops out. And if it does, they're going to go take it. And if it doesn't, it won't. But the idea that people are tied to us by a combination of how terrible it would be to not have a job, those kinds of issues in industries where there's a labor shortage. Now, there are industries where there's not a labor shortage, right? But in air conditioning and technicians, there is definitely a labor shortage. So in our industry, what that means is they just kind of have antenna up. It generates the opportunity to hear stories that get blown up into something bigger than are real, because they're looking, but they're not looking. They're looking. They just have their antenna up. So what do we do about this? Well, number one, it's never been more important to beef up your in-house management skills. The interaction you have with that person, it's never been more important that you have a great relationship with your technicians and that you can interact with them. Okay. And that there's a positive back and forth related to it. Now, the second thing to do, I hope that's obvious as to why, because it's not like you're a waiter and they're at your restaurant, but there is a higher level that's just naturally generated by these disparities in headcount, capacity, availability. The expectation of being treated better goes up. And so you just have to make that investment. Okay. The second thing to do that I haven't heard anybody else talking about this, and I don't know why, but it is a big deal for me in my practice. You need to think through a spouse program, because the decision looks something like this. Like I'm technician Earl, and I'm working for XYZ Mechanical, but I've kind of been watching ABC Mechanical, and they've reached out to me and they said, hey, you want to come over here anytime? You just let us know. And I think, I want to do this. Okay. In that scenario, I'm going to go home and I'm going to talk to my spouse. I'm going to say, hey, I think I want to make the change to ABC Mechanical. And how is your spouse going to respond to that? Are you sure? Have you really looked into it? Are you sure the benefits are such and such? Are you sure that that's the truck you're going to get? You don't really know those people. It may not be great where you are, but you know what you've got, right? 10 years ago, That guy's sitting on a couch getting an offer, and his spouse thinks this is the best job that's ever been offered to anybody anywhere ever. Okay. So you need to account for that social permission in the decision-making process when a technician leaves one place and goes to another place. Who else has to say this? Yes, this is a good idea. You should do that. That person will kill deals for you if you pretend like that's not a relevant part of the situation. I've seen it happen. Okay. I bet some of you who are watching this, you interviewed someone, it went great. They said, man, I think I want to do this. I just got to go home and talk to my wife. And I never heard from them again. Well, go figure. How could that be? It's because of this dynamic, right? So you got to beef up your skills. You got to take into account the spouse dynamics, right? Excuse me. And third, you need to change your mindset about what kind of relationships you need to build with technicians in your community as part of your recruiting effort. Here's what I mean. Unlike other kinds of jobs, technicians are not geographically mobile in their job search. And by that, I mean, it for 90% of technicians, probably higher than that, a technician who's living and working in Dallas is not going to relocate to Atlanta for that job. Now, they might relocate for some other reason, but they're not going to relocate to make $4 an hour more in Atlanta and uproot their family and that whole thing, right? So the technicians that are in your community are there. And you need to get to know them, including the ones who don't work for you yet. And you just work through how you want to do that. Do you want to start everybody's a little different here. It could be a quarterly thank you to the technicians in our community night. It could be more one by one. You just want to build your own network of guys you know. And when it's time to hire, you've got a pool of guys already. But fundamentally, the idea here is that in the old days, a job application would kick off an employment relationship. In 2024, a relationship built kicks off the application. You need to go touch these guys and become known by and friends with these guys before you expect an application to come in. Now, part of the reason for this is that Indeed has made it so easy to apply that they just click, and they have applied, but they haven't really applied. They're looking, right? They're taking a walk through an uncultivated garden to see if there's any apples. They're not actually applying. When they come to your website after some kind of nurture from you and take the time to fill out your application on your website, now they're applying. And that is a very significant event, much more significant than clicking something on Indeed. Okay. So there's your deal. This is the new state of the workforce. They're looking, but it doesn't mean they're automatically going to leave. If they find something better with you, they'll consider it, but there's got to be a different kind of nurture involved. The level of interaction and management, quality of management has got to be better than where they're at. The spouse has to be accounted for, or anybody else in there close to them who's in their network enough that somebody could pay a price if this was a bad decision on their part. Whoever that group is, normally it's spouse, but it could be parents. I don't know. But whoever would consider this, I pay a price if you make the bad decision here, they're going to have a say socially in that decision, and you need to account for that. And lastly, you need to get to know these guys well enough so that they fill out this application for real on your website, right? And they're not just poking through Indeed and looking. Okay. That's enough for this week. So I'm Dr. John Sherk. If you have any questions or want to talk to me about this more, please comment below or just reach out to me directly, John at operationslaboratory.com, and we will just get you started with some help. All right. We'll see you next week.